On today's show, Evan Mobley is going to be the key to getting the most out of Donovan Mitchell and what else we learned during 1 week of training camp on this edition of Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? It's Danny Cunningham. You might know me from my time covering the Cleveland Cavaliers, places like 92.3 The Fan, Cleveland Magazine, and now The Inside Shot, my new Substack, which you can find the link to in the description to this video. I want to say thank you to you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Make sure you drop us a 5-star rating, leave us some nice words in a review, and share this podcast with a friend. Cavs basketball is back. I want you to have Cavs basketball coverage. I want your friends to have Cavs basketball coverage. So make sure you do that. You can also check us out on YouTube. Just search Locked On Cavs on YouTube. If you're watching this video right now, hit that thumbs up button for me. Also, make sure you click subscribe and hit the notification bell so you know when the latest Locked On Cavs content is coming your way. A proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show, of course, is brought to you by FanDuel. And you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So the Cavs are 1 week into training camp. They are back from Sarasota. They had their first week at IMG Academy. Now they're getting ready for preseason games. They've got preseason game number 1 coming up at home tomorrow night. That would be Tuesday against the Chicago Bulls. But we have learned some things through 1 week of catching little glimpses of practice or post-practice shoot-around, availabilities with several guys. Obviously, Media Day worked in there as well. We've learned a lot. And I think the biggest takeaway that I have from 1 week with the Cavs is that Evan Mobley is going to be a much bigger part of the offense than he was previously. And I think in order for the Cavs to get the most out of Donovan Mitchell, they need to get the most out of Evan Mobley too. That's what I've taken away from this first week. Now, I posted a video and I talked about last week about Evan Mobley's jump shot looking smoother, and it absolutely has. It looks like a much different shot. It looks like a much better shot than what we're used to seeing from Evan Mobley. Now, that needs to translate into games. So when I'm going to, coming up in a little bit, talk about things that I'm looking to see in the preseason games that we're going to have this week, that jump shot and how that looks absolutely is part of it. But I think that we've heard so much about him and what he can do offensively, and the Cavs really haven't talked about him as an outside shooter. It's not to say that's not part of the plan, because it has been mentioned by head coach Kenny Atkinson, but I don't think it's the thing they're banking on happening the most. Okay. I think they are believing in Evan Mobley, the playmaker. They're thinking Evan Mobley is going to do a really good job of creating easy, or I guess clean, opportunities for his teammates. That, I think, is where he's going to have a bigger impact offensively this upcoming season than he did last year. Mobley had 160 assists in 50 games last year. That's not a ton. He threw, I felt like one of the things and I went back and watched all of his assists recently. One of the things that stood out to me in watching Evan last year, a lot of passes he threw felt like passes just to throw a pass. They didn't feel like they were passes that had a ton of purpose. I would expect that to be something that changes this year. And then there was one other thing that Kenny Atkinson said at Media Day last week that really stuck out to me, that made me think of Evan Mobley. He didn't say it about Evan Mobley, but it made me think of Evan Mobley. And he said that they want to put Donovan Mitchell in position to get easier baskets, to get cleaner looks, to essentially for him to not have to work as hard as he has had to work. Because Donovan Mitchell has been obviously an outstanding offensive basketball player for the Cavs in the last 2 years, but he's had to work really, really hard to make that happen. Now, he's more than capable of doing it. I think he's capable of more than he's done for the Cavs so far in the last 2 years, but I think it can come easier to him. And I think the key for it coming easier to him is going to be how Evan Mobley is able to set him up. I think we are going to see those two work together more often this upcoming season than we have in the past. That is takeaway number 1 that I have from the first week of Cavs training camp, because that right there is something that can absolutely make this offense go. If Evan Mobley is going to be a more integral part of the offense, is going to have the basketball in his hands more, with the opportunity to attack the basket, to get downhill, to push in transition, kind of be in even that trailer position that Darius Garland and a few other Cavs have talked about. With that being the case, this Cavs offense, I think, is going to be much more diversified in how it can attack teams. And I think Evan Mobley is going to be a big reason why. Thing number 2 that we learned in week number 1 of training camp, Kenny Atkinson is going to have his hands full creating a rotation here. And as you hear that, you probably think, oh, that doesn't sound good. And normally you'd be right. But I think that the Cavs right now, they've got a lot of guys that are quality NBA players that deserve to play. Kenny can't play everybody. They have, I think, 14 guys that can say, you know what, I could go out there on a nightly basis and help this team win. I think everyone that is on a standard NBA contract feels that way and should feel that way. But all 14 guys can't play every night. That's not how the NBA works. Now, it's great to have depth because at some point this year, someone's going to miss time because of an injury. I don't know who, I don't know when, but I promise you all 5 starters are not all going to play 82 games. I guarantee that. You can take that to the bank. Someone will miss time at some point. It's unfortunate. You can't turn injuries off in the NBA, though. So the depth is very important. And if I had to bet, someone that comes off the bench going to miss time at some point during the NBA season. They're all not going to play 82 games. But Kenny has to get that 14 number down to most likely 10, maybe 11, but most likely 10 guys. Right now, I think that there are 8 guys that are guaranteed to play when you look at the starting 5 of Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, Max Strus, Evan Mobley, Jarrett Allen. That group of 5, obviously they're going to play. Karis LeVert is going to play. I believe Dean Wade is going to play. And Isaac Okoro, I believe, is locked in there. So you've got 8 guys already taking up spots. So now you've got 6 guys left for 2, maybe 3 spots. I don't know how that's going to work out for Kenny Atkinson. I do think that Jalen Tyson, who has been named and mentioned positively by all of his teammates that have been asked about him in the first week, I do think Jalen Tyson's going to make it really hard for Kenny Atkinson to not play him. I don't know that Jalen Tyson's going to be in the opening night rotation. He might not be truly in the rotation for a little while, but I think he's going to do everything he can to force Kenny Atkinson's hand. I don't know that he's going to be ready right away. I don't know what his skill set is going to look like right away. I did think it was encouraging that I believe it was Max Strus said he had been impressed by what Tyson was doing off of the ball, because if you go back and watch Summer League, Jalen Tyson was really good, but he had the basketball in his hands a ton. And he's not going to have the basketball in his hands a ton when he's playing for the Cavs. Why? Because they've got guys that need the ball in their hands more than he does. You know, you can't put the ball in Jalen Tyson's hands to take it out of Donovan Mitchell or Darius Garland or Evan Mobley. And, you know, the list just kind of goes on. It's pretty far down that pecking order. But hearing that he has been good without the basketball in his hands tells me, 1, he has improved from Summer League, and 2, it's going to be really difficult to keep him out of the rotation on a regular basis. He's going to earn minutes at some point. I don't know when it's going to be, but he is going to be somebody that I believe helps the Cavs this year based on the early returns from what we have heard coming out of training camp. Thing number 3 that I think we have learned, Isaac Okoro's role is going to look differently this year too. You know, I talked about how Evan Mobley's role is going to change and how he's going to be used differently offensively. I think Isaac Okoro is going to be tasked with doing more on the offensive end of the floor. I don't think he's going to be some high usage player suddenly, but I think we're going to see him more often setting screens for teammates. He's not just going to be sitting in the corner. Now, he is a good cutter. I don't know that he necessarily cut enough in the previous years, because I think the Cavs coaching staff just wanted him to be in the corner to try and create space that way. But I think that he's going to be used more than just as a space creator. I think he's going to be used as somebody that can do a little bit of playmaking for others in the short roll, but certainly operate in the pick and roll. And I think that is going to be something that does help to open up the Cavs offense. And that doesn't mean he's never going to be standing in the corner. Like, that's not going to be the case either. But I do think that this offense that the Cavs are going to be operating is going to have more ball movement than the previous offenses have had. And I think that's going to mean guys aren't going to be standing around. You're not going to see too much stagnation, if you will, with this offense. You're going to see them really look to get involved, really look to be more of a movement-based offense. I think that is something that could benefit Isaac Okoro. And I think if that benefits Isaac Okoro, that's something that's going to benefit the Cavs. Kenny Atkinson was asked about him last week at IMG Academy, and he talked about how much he thinks he still has left to go in terms of his development, where he signed a nice contract this year. Kenny talked about this. He signed a nice contract where it's, that 3 year, I think it's $38 million. But he wants Isaac Okoro's contract after this one to be much bigger. He thinks there's enough there to unlock that he can really take a step or two up in his game. And I think that is something that should excite Cavs fans, because if they're getting that out of Isaac Okoro, it's easier to keep him on the floor. And you already know that he's a terrific defender on the perimeter on the other end of the court. JB Bickerstaff called him the best perimeter defender in basketball. I've mentioned it a number of times. But this could be a way to make Isaac Okoro more impactful, really, on both ends. Because if he can do more on offense, it's easier to keep him on the floor, and that helps out the Cavs defensively, obviously. Now, the week ahead, the Cavs have their first 2 preseason games. What should we be looking for as they take on the Bulls and the Pacers? I'll tell you that next, right here on Locked On Cavs. Today's show is brought to you by BetterHelp. And October is the season for wearing masks and costumes. Why is that? Well, that's because Halloween is almost here. Everyone loves spooky season, right? Maybe throw on a spooky movie and enjoy a nice cozy night by the fire. At the end of the month, you get to dress up, have some fun, get to pretend maybe to be somebody you're not. But more often, some of us feel like we wear a mask and hide in social settings, at work, around our family. Well, I'm here to tell you, therapy can help you learn and accept all parts of yourself so you can take off that mask, because masks, they should be for Halloween fun, not for hiding our emotions. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It is entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Those 3 things are very important to me. I think they're very important to a lot of people with how much of a whirlwind today's world can be. Having something that is convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule is a really big game changer, if you ask me. So just fill out a brief questionnaire and you can get matched with a licensed therapist. I actually think this is another really important thing. You can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. It can be difficult at times to find a therapist that works for you. So with BetterHelp, you can switch therapists anytime, no additional charge. So take the mask off with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. Again, visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA and get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA, LOCKEDONNBA today for 10% off your first month. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. Now for your second listen, go on, check out Locked On NBA. There are news and notes and analysis needed, not just here in Cleveland, but all around the basketball world. The experts locally and nationally, of course, at Locked On NBA have you covered. Available anywhere you get your podcasts. Also, check them out on YouTube. Just search Locked On NBA on YouTube. A proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So I told you about what we have learned so far through camp. And now I want to talk about what there is to look ahead to, plus maybe get into some win predictions too. But the Cavs play their first 2 preseason games this week, both of them at home. They take on the Chicago Bulls on Tuesday. They take on the Indiana Pacers on Thursday. I don't know what things are going to look like. We will find out, I think, a little bit. We'll probably gather a little bit more information from Kenny Atkinson, whether it's today or tomorrow before the game, about what the Cavs' plan is for these preseason games. But without knowing that plan, there are some things that I'm interested in learning by seeing this team on the floor together in a, I don't want to call it necessarily a competitive environment, because if the Cavs lose a preseason game, I'm not going to get on here and be upset about it. It doesn't matter in the big scheme of things. But there are things to be learned. And the number one thing that I am curious about, what sort of pace are the Cavs going to play like in the preseason? I don't expect them to be at a breakneck pace, but I do wonder, are they going to be able to play at the pace right away that they anticipate playing at when they hit their peak? Or is this going to be something that it's going to take time for them to work up to it? because maybe they're not super comfortable with the offense yet with some of the tweaks that Atkinson and his staff are making from the JB Bickerstaff staffs of past. Are they going to be able to get into their sets earlier in the shot clock on offense? I think that's a really important thing. Far too often last year, we would see the Cavs really start to get into the meat and potatoes of their offense, and there'd be like 14 seconds left on the shot clock. I would think that is something Kenny Atkinson wants to change, where he would prefer to do that at, 18 or 19 seconds left, so that things can develop more and it's easier and creates better end of clock situations too for the Cavs. I don't know if that's going to be something they're going to be able to accomplish in the preseason. That might be something that takes time. I genuinely don't know. I do expect them to be faster right away than they were last year, but I don't know that they're going to be where they want to be. That it might take time. I don't know. That is something I do want to ask Kenny Atkinson. I do want to know his thoughts on that, because I'm genuinely curious if this is something that needs to be worked into, if it takes time to build up to it, or if it's something that you can just kind of snap your fingers and get to it. I don't know the answer to it. Thing number 2, I'm very interested in finding out this week in preseason games. Not so much who plays, because I think, the rotation is going to be expanded in the preseason. I don't anticipate, Donovan Mitchell playing 34 minutes in a preseason game this week. Maybe he does. I don't anticipate it. But it's more so who plays early in these games. Does Kenny Atkinson, where he has said he would, like, his ideal number is kind of 10, just philosophically as a coach with his rotation. Does he play 10 guys in the first half, in the first quarter? Does he play 8 guys in the first quarter, 9 guys in the first quarter? I am very interested, very, very interested to see what the rotation looks like for the Cavs right away. I'm curious, does Jalen Tyson get the nod before someone like Sam Merrill? Where's George Niang at in the pecking order? How does this look? Is Karis LeVert still the first guy off the bench? These are questions I have that I don't know that, what happens in the preseason is the be-all, end-all for that stuff. But I do think we'll get a clue. We are going to, this week, we are going to learn about the Cleveland Cavaliers. And that is something that does excite me. Like, we are going to learn about Kenny Atkinson's rotation habits, how long, and again, this is not going to be one for one with preseason, regular season, but we might learn how long he prefers stints to be for his starters. How long is the starting 5 on the floor to begin the game on Tuesday night if they all play? Those are things I'm really interested in finding out. I really want to know exactly what that looks like. Now, of course, I don't anticipate this being the case deep into the second half. I would think that you're going to see guys, probably all 14 guys on the Cavs that are on standard contracts play, plus the two-way guys and some of the training camp invites too. Like, would it surprise me if we saw 20 guys playing a preseason game? No, it would not. But pay attention to the first half, because if they have everyone available, what the first half rotations look like could be a pretty big clue as far as what Atkinson wants to do with the rotation when the regular season does arrive. Third thing, very interested in, Evan Mobley's usage in the preseason. When he is out there with the starters particularly, how often is the basketball in his hands? I think it's easier for him to be an offensive hub when he's out there with one of Darius Garland or Donovan Mitchell and not both of them. But how often is he not handling the basketball, but maybe pushing the ball up the floor after a miss, or having the ball at the elbow or the top of the three-point arc, being able to play make, being able to drive off the dribble, being able to operate the offense? What does that look like, and how often does it happen? Again, this is something that, just like the pace, might need to be worked up to. They might not be able to do this right away. It might not be something that they can just snap their fingers, flip a switch, and it looks great. I would bet that's not going to be the case. But how often they're trying to get Evan Mobley the ball, because I do think that this is not going to be a finished product on day one. I think it's something they're going to need to have some patience with. How much patience will they need? I don't know. But what's the starting point for this? I think that this is going to be an opportunity in these preseason games. I think it's going to be an opportunity to sort of develop a baseline, if you will, to where, okay, this is sort of the starting point for the Cavs. And we'll be able to track, where it goes from here as far as Evan Mobley's usage, the positions he's in, how fast he's playing, the types of passes he's making, what does his shot profile look like, how many threes is he taking? I think those things we're going to start to get some sort of a clue on this week. And I think that is something that should be very exciting for Cavs fans. The other thing I did want to mention in this segment. So I've seen a couple of win projections come out. ESPN very high on the Cavs. Bleacher Report even higher on the Cavs. I've got that. Plus, could the WNBA be coming back to Cleveland? We'll talk about that next, straight ahead right here on Locked On Cavs. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel, and you can win big on FanDuel right now. Why can you win big on FanDuel right now? Well, because you can get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. I hope your first $5 bet was not on the Cleveland Browns this past weekend as they got smoked again. Don't feel great about that. I do hope your first $5 bet might have been on Saturday afternoon on the Cleveland Guardians. That would be great. You'd be a winner. Not only would you have won your bet, but if it was your first $5 bet with FanDuel, you're going home with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed as well. One thing you might want to bet on is the Cavs win total for the 24-25 season. Right now, FanDuel has it set at 48.5. Going to talk about what a couple of other places think about this in terms of ESPN and Bleacher Report coming up, but FanDuel thinks 48.5. So maybe you're confident in the Cavs like I am. FanDuel would be the place to go for you. So head on over to FanDuel. Like I said, when you make your first $5 bet, you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Plus, when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, whether it's the Cavs preseason game on Tuesday, maybe Monday Night Football tonight, the Browns this upcoming weekend, maybe the Cleveland Guardians this afternoon, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more the same page where you place your bets. So once again, you can get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Just head on over to FanDuel.com, of course, America's #1 sports book. That's FanDuel.com today. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button for me. Click the subscribe button and hit the notification bell because you do not want to miss the latest Locked On Cavs content that comes your way. So win projections are out. ESPN released theirs last week. Bleacher Report, I believe, did it over the weekend. But ESPN had the Cleveland Cavaliers finishing second in the Eastern Conference with 50.6 wins. Obviously, that number is over the number FanDuel had it set at that you just heard me talk about at 48.5. They had the Cavs only behind Boston. ESPN had the Celtics winning 52.4 games. Then the Bucks were in third with, get this, nearly a 4-game gap between the Cavs and the Bucks. Now, these are, I believe, a computer simulation run by Kevin Pelton to get this number. So it's not as if this is something that, writers voted on, something like that. This is a computer simulation that spits this out. But I do think that they're on the right track here. I would be surprised if the Cavs are not a 50-win team this year. I really would. With all the continuity they have, with Evan Mobley potentially taking another step, even if Evan Mobley doesn't take a big step offensively, I think Donovan Mitchell is going to have the best year of his career. Like, I see no reason why the Cavs won't win 50 games. I don't. And you know who agrees with me? Bleacher Report. Bleacher Report predicts the Cavs are going to go 54-28. 54 wins. That's a pretty big number. I don't know if I'm that ambitious, but I don't think that's a crazy thing to look at. Like, if the Cavs won 54 games, I don't think you should be surprised. I think this team is built to be a regular season wins machine. Bleacher Report also has them third in the East. I don't think that should be some shock. Like, I really think these things are very possible for the Cavs. I think they're going to surprise a lot of people. I really do. I think there's a better chance than not the Cavs are a home court team. I don't care that on paper Boston and New York and Philly and Milwaukee are all supposed to be better than the Cavs. It's not going to work out that way. It almost never does. And if the Cavs win 50 games, they're going to be in the top 4. You do not win 50 games in the Eastern Conference and not get home court. It has not happened since 1998. That's truly where I'm at with this. So Bleacher Report, again, had the Cavs at 54 wins and third in the East. ESPN had the Cavs at 50.6, second in the East. One last thing I did want to mention on today's show, Donovan Mitchell was asked on, I believe it was Friday, about the WNBA. So the WNBA is expanding. Golden State is getting a team. I believe the Valkyrie. Portland is getting a team. And maybe Toronto too. But Cleveland, once upon a time, did have the Cleveland Rockers. They were a WNBA team that lasted for a little while before folding. And he was asked about the possibility of bringing the WNBA back. He, of course, thought it was a very good idea, something he would love to be involved with. He said, I think Cleveland is ready for it. I do. I really think Cleveland is ready to have the WNBA back in town. I hope it's something that happens. I don't know if it will be something that happens, but I think this town is ready for it. And obviously having Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse is very nice. There is the potential for a NWSL, a women's soccer team coming to town too, which I think is great that we could get a professional women's sports team in Cleveland. But I would love to see the WNBA back in town. So who knows? It could happen. It might not. I don't know. But I just thought it was something, because Donovan Mitchell was asked about it last week, I thought it was something that was worth bringing up. So as I get out of here, I want to say thank you again to you for making today's edition of Locked On Cavs your first listen, and for making Locked On Cavs your first listen every day. You can find us anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating, leave a nice review. Also, check us out on YouTube. Just search Locked On Cavs on YouTube. Hit that thumbs up button if you're liking this, and hit subscribe and click the notification bell.